Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer, and I am with CUGC HQ, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's CUGC Connect webinar with PrinterLogic. Going to be looking at how you can improve your print environment with your Citrix virtual apps and desktops. So excited to get into that today. But before we do, I'd like to introduce today's moderator. We have Paul Stansel with us. Paul is the leader of Connecticut and Rhode Island CUGC, and he's also a CTP. And as you see before you, you can follow him on Twitter at pstansel. Paul, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thanks for coming out.
All right, so Paul is going to keep an eye on all your questions today. So as we go through the presentation, if you'll type those into the question panel, Paul will keep an eye on those, and we may ask some during the presentation and demo and save others for the end. It kind of depends on what your questions are and how things are going with the presentation. So, but do type them in as you have them. We'll definitely keep an eye on those. All right, and let's get to our presenters. So today we have with us Eric Johnson. He's a channel systems engineer with PrinterLogic, and Kyle Yardley. He is a partner business development manager. Eric, I think you're going to be our main presenter today, so I'm going to send the screen over to you. And I think you wanted to, after you say hello, of course, I think you wanted to kick things off with an initial poll, right?
Yeah, we'll do a couple polls over the course of this just to keep you guys engaged and make sure we're seeing what you have to say about things. So, hello everybody. Happy to be here. I'm Eric Johnson, and I share my screen with you guys here, and we'll get started here with our first poll.
All right, I'll kick it off right now.
Perfect.
There you go.
All right. So basically, what kind of challenges are you having with your printing environment right now? Are you good? Are you seeing some challenges? Where are you at with that? Go ahead and cast your votes there, and we'll see how you feel about things. All right. So while we do that, as far as PrinterLogic is concerned, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background on who we are and what we do. We'll focus a little bit on your Citrix environment and maybe some questions that you might have, but want to let you know where Kyle and I are coming from and what we represent. So at PrinterLogic, our mantra is that we eliminate print servers, but basically what we do is we help IT professionals eliminate all their print servers and deliver a highly available serverless print infrastructure. So we do that with a centrally managed direct IP printing platform that allows you to empower your end users with mobile printing, with secure release printing, and a lot of different advanced features that legacy print management applications can provide. So that's where we're, kind of coming from. As far as who we are, we were founded in 2001. We've got over 2,000 customers in over 150 countries. We're actually a little bit above 170 employees now. We've been growing really rapidly in this space. And just to give you some ideas, some logos that we have, some different customers that we've worked with, you can see here we've got everything from companies like Tesla to, we've got Disney, we've got Department of Homeland Security, 7-Eleven, lots of different industry verticals, because the reality is that everybody prints, right? So all these different organizations can see challenges in their printing infrastructure and can approach a company like ours to help them solve some of those, whether they're going into virtualization challenges or they have other legacy print environments that they're having difficulties with. So like I said, our mantra is really to eliminate the print servers as an infrastructure. So for me, I guess poll question 2 is, if we could launch that, how are you managing your print environment today? And Stephanie, has that poll been launched for poll number 2?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you might not be able to see it. So about 51% have voted.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I'm not seeing the poll questions on my side, so.
Okay, I'll as soon as they finish up here, I'll share the results with you.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, I don't know if some of you prefer to manage your environment like this. You maybe just want to take some of your printers out into a field and smash them. Sometimes we can get so frustrated that that's what we want to do, right? So, but we see a lot of different issues. I would say some of the most common ones are going to be around these topics, right? Whether it's printer installation, queue management, issues with the infrastructure as a whole, driver management, a lot of help desk calls inflating our help desk and making it hard for them to respond to everything else that's on their plate, and then virtual environments. And that's obviously what we're going to focus a little bit more on today. So I just wanted to kind of highlight a few different issues that we typically see in virtual environments. So I guess going over just the typical architecture really quickly, let me just talk to that. So we might see, it's pretty common to have like a centralized print server, right? And do like auto-created printers with your centralized print server. And that's common because that's always kind of been the approach. Centralize that print server, bring it into your data center. But what it does is it produces a lot of WAN traffic. So you end up with a lot of latency because you've got jobs that are traversing your WAN connectivity. They're going across, even sometimes uncompressed from a workstation out to a print server to render. And then that job is being sent back to the remote site to the network printer. So you get a bunch of traffic with that. You might see that you've got like a distributed model. So you have multiple print servers. And so it kind of gets rid of some of the different latency issues, but not entirely. And your print server is still actually functioning as a point of failure in your infrastructure in these cases. So if you have that print server and it goes down, you're kind of in trouble. You could have like a failover solution, but you're still introducing more and more challenges to your environment and increasing that complexity. When I think the goal with your virtualization efforts were to simplify that and to create scalability, and your print server doesn't really allow you to do that, and it's not very cost effective. So we can do, again, session printing, auto creation of printers with print servers. All of it is still resulting in a lot more latency in the infrastructure. And so some of the issues that we see obviously would be like WAN traffic, right? If you've centralized, you're generating like huge amounts of unnecessary WAN traffic when you're using auto-created printers, and that's because the job is obviously, it's making 2 trips across the WAN before it finally ends up at the printer, even if the printer is literally right in front of your end user. I'd say some of the other issues we see are like a crashing print spooler, and that's usually a result of a driver. So we're getting back into that kind of driver management conversation, right? When we see a crashed spooler, that's going to affect everybody, and we've got to go and locate the that rogue driver that's causing the problem. Some of the other things I see are like a vanishing or like a missing printer, like a ghost printer, whatever you want to call it. And that's because, like, whether we're using session or auto-created printers, the reality is that we're dealing with different policies inside of our Citrix environment that are pushing out those policy scripts or services into the Citrix session. If those fail, then that's going to leave our end users without a usable printer, and that's going to move over into the help desk ticket category. So these issues start to compound on one another. Another one that I see a lot of challenges with are scripting and GPOs. So like we can use a script and it can be reliable up to a certain point, but usually we can kind of question that reliability. It can prolong the login times of end users, which makes for a really poor experience for end users when they are using a Citrix environment or another virtualization platform. Another one is proximity printers, I would say. So you can use your Citrix policies to configure a proximity printer and map that printer. But again, that's adding more complexity to your to what you're doing in your Citrix environment. So if you ever have issues with that or conflicts of some sort, maybe like the wrong proximity printer gets mapped, and so, or the correct printer's just missing entirely, you've got to go in and kind of search through those layers and figure out what the issue is. And some of that's caused, again, back to driver management, right? If we have a bunch of different drivers that we're trying to utilize, you might bloat your golden image, you might overpopulate your Citrix server with too many drivers, and they'll actually hurt performance and may lead back into that issue of like a crashing print spooler. So all these things keep compounding on one another, and so it gets really hard to manage these kind of environments. And so one of the big things is eliminating your print server out of an infrastructure. That can be really helpful. Stephanie, how are we doing on that poll? Do we have the results from everybody now?
Yeah, so top place was multiple print servers, and then so that was 55%, followed by third-party software at 26, single print server at 16, and 3% unmanaged direct IP.
Perfect. Okay, great. So, all right. So now let's go into some of the next slides here. So we kind of talked about each of those different topics. Benefits of PrinterLogic, right? Pretty straightforward. Eliminate your print servers. We're talking about centrally managing your direct IP environment. We can simplify your driver deployment. So we'll talk a little bit about that and about deployment. And then also we'll talk about the VDI environments a little bit more and removing those single points of failure. So just so you know, there's a couple different ways to digest our product. You can look at Printer Installer, which is your on-premises version of the platform. You're using either a virtual or physical server. And then we also have Printer Cloud, which is it's going to be a solution that's hosted in AWS. So just really quick, I want to give you an idea on that too. I have a little reference architecture for you. So I don't want you to think as you look at this that, oh, I'm dealing with a print server in the cloud, right? We are eliminating that print server and giving you a direct IP printing solution that has central management to it. So in this case, whether we're on-prem or with Printer Cloud that's hosted, you're going to have this solution here. We're going to push a client agent to the workstations, and then we're printing via direct IP, right? So if internet goes down, or if the AWS solution goes down, or if your server that hosts Printer Installer that's on-prem goes down for whatever reason, we have built-in highly available solutions here. So we don't have any dependency on the server. It's really simple. We're doing direct IP printing. We're directly printing to that printer without the dependencies on the internet connectivity or the server itself. So this is kind of what this looks like. And this is a document that goes over kind of a reference architecture for you. We'll distribute this to you if you're curious about moving into the cloud. Relative to this, you know, the on-prem solution is pretty similar, other than that it's not in the cloud. So still the same rules apply. As far as the solution is concerned that I want to show you guys today, we've got basically three main components to that solution. So there's an admin console, there's a self-service portal, and there's a desktop client. Really simple. As far as the admin console is concerned, that's literally just your interface. And I'm going to show you this in a live demo here in just a second. But this is going to allow you to kind of define your printer objects. It's going to allow you to create deployments and get rid of the scripts and the GPOs that have previously defined the way that you're deploying printers inside of your environment. And there's also a self-service portal. I like this because this is really beneficial to the help desk, especially because it's going to take some of the requests off the help desk and help them be a little bit more optimized to deal with other issues in the infrastructure. So a self-service portal, we basically provide maps that make it so an end user can click on an icon and self-install their printer, and they can do it in Windows, Mac, or Linux. So we'll give you that single pane of glass to manage across the entire infrastructure, not just isolating you to Windows or something like that. Then the desktop client is the final component. So we're pushing out a desktop client, and it's just a web client, really, is what it is. So if you're concerned about latency and communication and stuff like that, then it's pretty simple, right? So you push that client out on the workstation, and it runs as a system service with administrator rights, and you don't need elevated privileges for end users to be able to use that feature. This is kind of what it looks like overall in your infrastructure, right? We set up printer installer or printer cloud, whichever one you're looking at. And then you distribute the client agent to the workstations, however you would typically do that, whether it's like SCCM or whether you want to use a GPO. And again, we support Windows, Mac, and Linux with this. So once you've distributed that client to the workstations, everybody is doing direct IP printing at that point. And you've also got, again, no dependency on that internet connectivity, no dependency on your data center to have this up and running. Everybody's still going to be able to print with that highly available architecture without having to require a bunch of server redundancy. So that's where I'm at with this. As far as the polls go, there's one more that I wanted to throw up there for you guys before we move into the live demo, just to make sure you're still with me. So we got a who wore it better situation. I was over at iGel's Disrupt event out in California about 2 weeks ago, and they were offering some tattoos. So I decided to test out my Iron Mike status. And I think this is probably the only time that I'm ever going to go up against Iron Mike. So I'm just honored to be in the runnings, even if I don't win, but I'll keep my fingers crossed. So I want to move into that live demonstration now with you guys, kind of show you what Printer Cloud is about. So this is my Printer Cloud lab. I'll show you kind of some of the features that we have here that make it really simple for you to manage your environment and some of the ways that we propose that you solve some of the issues that I went over with you. So this is my administrator console. If you see here, I can click on a folder location, and I have tools in this administrator console that make it so I can kind of manage that environment, create alerts, set up a map. If I click on the printer icons themselves, these are the printers that I'm managing, okay? And then there's tools at the top to help me manage those. So I can go in and I can, change a printer name. I can go in and change the web interface. I can go to the port, change it here. I can add in drivers, change those out. I can create printer deployments. I'll focus on these a little bit more just to kind of show you what they are. But you can see I also have, I can monitor the queue. I can check the status of printers, those kind of things here. So it's all right here at your fingertips in the administrator console, as well as a host of tools that can be used for reporting, defining how users interact with the system, print job costs, all sort of things like that. So it's a full suite of tools that can make this really simple for you. Now, Paul, we've kind of gone over some of the basics of Printer Cloud's platform. I wonder if we have any questions from the group coming in. Have you seen anything that maybe we need to check in on from the questions?
Sure. So there's definitely questions that I think you'll answer a little bit of in the demo, but one of the things that comes up is USB printers, especially when you start talking about USB printers and thin clients like iGel or things like that. How does PrinterLogic work with an iGel thin client?
Oh, yeah, okay. Great question. So really quickly to go over that one, as far as like a USB printer is concerned, PrinterLogic manages network printers. So we wouldn't be managing the USB printers, but because of that client being there strategically located on the workstation and interacting with what the user is doing inside of their workstation, we can capture details about the print job. So we can still give you a reporting suite, even though there's not management for it. When we talk about iGel specifically, our integration with iGel actually allows us to provide our client agent embedded in the iGel OS. So when we talked about like distributing the clients and stuff with like an MSI or a PKG or DEB file and throwing that out through a GPO or SCCM, that's not necessary with iGel. We're already embedded. You literally just activate the license key and point that to your Printer Cloud instance, and you've got a live setup right there, ready to go. We actually won the Alliance Partner of the Year with iGel this year, so we're really excited about that strategic integration. It's been really valuable to customers who are using iGel. Now, if you're not, we can still support you. Even if you're not in iGel, you're using thin, zero, or thick clients, whatever it is, we can still provide that, but it does encompass some deployment requirements. So, awesome question. Thank you for that one. Anything else you can think of before I move into a little bit more detail on this? Paul?
And then the other one that came up was can you explain a little more what pull printing is?
Yeah, sure. So we can go into pull printing in just a minute, but basically the idea with pull printing is that we're creating a virtual queue that gets distributed to our end users, and then that queue services all of the different physical printers. So as an end user, I print to the virtual queue, my job is held, and then I choose a release point by different mechanisms. So one mechanism might be I walk up to an MFP, and it would be something like this, where I walk right up to it, I authenticate with either Active Directory or with like a badge scan if I've set those up, and then I have my jobs held here. I can select my jobs through that interface and manage those as they go through. So that would be one option. Another would be from like a mobile device. So if I had held jobs, I could look at my my iPhone or my Android device or a tablet of some sort, whatever it is. As long as that's connected to the network, I can log into an end user portal and see my held jobs that are assigned specifically to me and release those jobs that way. So there's several different options, but that's basically the architecture of pull printing for us. It's a virtual queue. We use a driver that's assigned to that, and then have those jobs held until somebody's able to release them through whatever release mechanism they choose to use. There's also an integration with a partner called RF Ideas, where they provide an Ethernet 241 box that can make even the dumbest of printers that you have, you know, the ones that you wanted to take out into the field and smash with a baseball bat, you could actually set those up to be secure release printers with their 241 box. So you can scan your badge right at the reader there that they provide and turn even like a desktop HP into a secure release printer. And it will release the last job without having to have a graphical interface for the end user to deal with. So kind of a cool integration there. Any other questions before we kind of move into some of the details of this?
No, let's go ahead into the details. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So as I kind of mentioned a little bit about thick, zero, and thin clients, I wanted to just talk really quickly about some of the different ways that you might be dealing with print inside of your virtual environment. So really we either have session printing, VDI printing, or we have auto creation, redirection of printing. So really what it does is it comes down to like the bulk of where the rendering and the spooling of a print job is going to take place. So is it going to be inside of the session? Is it going to be on the host server? Is it going to be on the client? Those are the questions that we ask when we start to consider these things. And in like a session or VDI printing setup, it really only involves the rendering and spooling inside of the virtual desktop on the host server. So the print job is not ever going to pass through like the physical client. So in VDI printing, I mean, it's basically for us, it's the same as physical workstation printing. The print queues are installed within the virtual desktop, and the jobs themselves are spooled inside of that virtual desktop and then sent directly to the printer without passing through the physical client. So it's a very straightforward approach. For session printing, when we're printing within a session, the job's initiated from inside that session, and then it's sent to the print queue that's installed in the server OS, and it's spooled on that server and then sent directly to the printer, right? So those are pretty common examples inside of a VDI environment, but we'll also have auto creation or redirection taking place. So basically the idea with that is that you're taking that print queue that's installed on a physical client and you're bringing that instance into a virtual space. Now, there's ways to do that with the different virtualization applications that you use, but that's not the function of PrinterLogic in that kind of scenario. What PrinterLogic's product is intended to do is it's supposed to be responsible for deploying the print queue to the physical workstation. Then your virtualization apps that you're using will use whatever policies you put in place to pull those deployed printers into that virtual environment, and then your end user is going to have the option to print however you define, like what universal print driver you're using or whatever configurations exist inside of that. So that's kind of how we deal with those. We can support both. It just kind of depends on the choices of the IT administrators and and what approach you're going for. We can even kind of have a blended approach. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about what you might see in terms of what you're deploying out into your infrastructure. And so the first one that I wanted to cover is like VDI, just straightforward VDI. So as far as PrinterLogic is concerned, like since the guest sessions are running on the host server, it just makes sense that it's going to be the same as it would be on that host OS. So when we're talking about a deployment, we're going to make a deployment here, and we're going to use Active Directory. Maybe we could use an IP address range. We could use a host name, MAC address, any combination to create that deployment to an end user, and that's going to hit that desktop. So if they are doing like a session print in VDI, like I said, it's going to be about the same as it would be just dealing with a regular straightforward workstation. Once that deployment happens, you're going to see that printer go live on the user's workstation. And how that's accomplished, again, client agent gets pushed to the workstation, and that's what's communicating back with your instance of Printer Cloud. So, so we have that capability there. Now, let's just talk a little bit about some of the different deployment mechanisms, right? Like Active Directory, I showed you that, but just so you know, we can go all the way from the user level up to the container and organizational unit level. We can target security groups, and we're not producing like a script or a GPO to do that, okay? So it's really simple to define this and to distribute this. If we're dealing with like a roaming profile setup in our Citrix environment, absolutely, we can support that here and have these users take their printers with them from session to session, whether you've deployed it through Active Directory, like it's going to follow them, or if you've done something with our administrators, kind of the other side of it, the self-service portal. So in this case, I've got this self-service portal, and you can kind of see, if you're a fan of The Office, you might recognize some of the names in the layout here. We've got Jim, we've got Dwight, we've got Michael. This is a floor plan map that enables these people to be able to self-install their own printer. So if Dwight wanted to install Michael's printer, super easy to do. Clicks on that icon, it populates this little request, you want to install this printer? Yes, we do. It runs through and it self-installs that printer. Now, if we're supporting roaming profiles, as Dwight hits different sessions, we can carry Michael's printer with us. Now, we could also secure this and make it so nobody else can install that. We can hide that through that portal security feature here and make it so that printer is no longer visible to everybody, but instead visible to a specific user, specific IP range, specific host name, whatever we want there. So those same mechanisms for deployment exist on the security side as well. And just so you know how this is built, it's pretty simple. You can see these little icons here. You can see the web-based image. Right here, we just go into the floor where we want to create that. We go to the map tab. We upload a background image. We choose that file, and then those icons or folders or printers themselves that populate in this folder appear here in this interface, and we literally just move them out. Maybe we give Ryan a printer that can sit on his lap now, and then we're good to go. So that's kind of how this setup works for us. Now that printer's live, people can self-install if they want to. That's what the self-service portal is all about. It's pretty simple to use. So I want to just cover those deployment strategies really quickly as we talk. Just give you a couple others to use. So we talked about issues with proximity printing, right? One of the cool things that we can do based on proximity is the deployment by IP address range. So if we do have network segments appropriately segmented out in an infrastructure, where as I move around my network, my range is going to change, then our client on the workstation is going to see that, and it's going to dynamically adjust what printers are available to a user. So this is almost a little bit like antithetical to the idea of the pull print, where we just have a single queue and then we securely release to whatever printer we want to. This is going to approach security from a totally opposite perspective by giving you printers that are within your proximity and removing printers that are no longer in your proximity. So as an example, let's just say, let's keep it simple. Let's say that I was visiting California. Maybe we have an office out there. I go to California, I get the printers that are at our California location. I print, I use them for the week, and then I go back home to Utah. If we do the IP address range deployment, it's actually going to allow me to get the printers in the California location and drop them off when I leave and pick back up those Utah printers. So it's dynamically following me back and forth. And this is pretty cool because this is even gonna be true in your virtual workstations. If we can see that endpoint's IP address, if we're doing like a Zen app or Zen desktop setup, we can still pass through. We can change the way that our client looks at users when they access those sessions on the server. And we can put our client into a remote desktop services mode is what we call it. So basically what we're doing is we're editing the registry key to allow it to identify multiple simultaneously logged in users as they access sessions. Now the printers are all installed on that server, right? It's on the Citrix server, but because of the way we're deploying things, that client sees which printers have been added to which users. So it's going to dynamically distribute the correct printers to each user who's accessing a session. So that's kind of how that works. When we can do a deployment with host name as well and apply those, we can see either the IP address or the host name of those endpoint devices, even on those thin and zero clients. And we can also do MAC address if that's an option that you want to look at. This advanced group one that I'm kind of skirting around, really what that is it's a collection of all of these different options. So you could pair like an Active Directory OU with an IP address range and include certain host names as a wildcard or something like that. You can create a totally customized deployment right inside of this interface that makes it really simple for you to deploy consistently to end users. Now, I want to show you what it takes to actually get into our software, because probably you're looking at some features and you're thinking, okay, well, how cumbersome is it to actually adopt this software and to test it out? We've made that really easy. I mean, that's the goal, right? So when you were talking in that first poll about some of you having just a ton of print servers to deal with, we'll actually leverage the print servers that you have, take the data off of them, and bring them into our solution and allow you to pull the plug on your print servers. And this is how you do it. So under import export, you've got, probably this is the number one option. I'll show you this one, but just so you know, there's a network scanner. So if any of you were doing like an unmanaged direct IP setup, we can scan your network and find active printers with this tool and make it easy for you to collect all of those in a list and populate those right here. But for now, I'm just going to show you this one. This is the migration tool that allows you to collect details off of your print server. And so this is what it looks like. Literally just enter the host name of your print server. I've already done that, so it's right here. And it's going to show me all the queues that exist on my print server. So here they are. We've got, oh, excuse me, there we go. We've got these here. I can select the printers. I can go to a location that I want to deal with, right? Maybe I'm bringing on the Ozark location. I copy over all these queues. They're going to populate in that folder here, and it's going to give you all the details that you had before, right? So everything that I showed you here, general tab, port information, I'll actually collect the drivers too. And so driver management would be a big thing to focus on here. We can collect all those drivers for you that you currently use. We can help you manage them more effectively, get rid of unwanted drivers, replace drivers across the whole infrastructure. As I could target one and replace it, and it would replace across every place that this driver is currently used. I have the option here to create different profiles and apply those out as well. Again, we can use any signed driver, and you can define different policies to use, like that native driver, like we talked about with session printing and VDI, or we can pull that Citrix universal driver or another driver if you want to define for like auto-created printer use. We can do that and add profiles there very easily. So it makes it really simple for you to manage those. Now, for the sake of time, I just want to give you a couple quick notes in the software as well. So here we still have queue management. I can see the jobs that are in the queue, and I can send remote stop signals down to workstations to kill that job that might be sitting in the queue. I have a status tab that allows me to see the status of printers. So if there's a printer with an issue, I can see it here. And in the future, like that one's obviously offline, I could say, hey, I want to know when a printer goes offline. I want to know if it has low paper, want to know if it's jammed, whatever it might be. And then I can send that to whoever I'd like. Or I can send this to like a help desk email address, and it can create a ticket in your ticketing system if you wanted to do something like that. but it will alert you on those issues that you see in your environment. Last thing I wanted to touch on inside of the product is on this report space. So we do have reports that will tell you about the workstations. You know, I mentioned that we can see the zero and thin clients in these workstation reports as well, so we can know when they're checking in and when there might be failures to check in. We can also take a look at print job records, and we can see things like the print jobs that are occurring in the infrastructure. So if I just back this up, give you a quick little sample. Okay, so I've got my jobs, right? Date, time, username, all this kind of detail here, counts, cost, and this is, again, comes into what we can do with TCP/IP printers and also USB printers. So this is where we can give you those reports on your USB printing habits and help you curtail some of that if you want, or just at least be aware of what's going on. There's a lot of different ways to digest this information. We can do it by department, by printer, individual users, overviews with charts and graphs. And the cool thing about it is if you create a report that you really like, schedule that report. Run it as a PDF or CSV, enter email recipients, and then choose your parameters here, and then choose how frequently that repeats. So if you want to issue a monthly report on printing habits to somebody that might be concerned with those, easy to do. Schedule the report and it will repeat itself, so you don't have to keep logging in and doing that. There's a lot more features here. We can talk about mobile printing. We can talk about pull and secure printing. We have specific focuses, I would say, on healthcare. We can help you with your EMR or EHR printing. We can do a lot of different back-end printing. We can help you with label and receipt printers and thermal printers. We have a lot of different things that we can do, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into those too much. What I actually want to do is have you direct a little bit more what we talk about here in the next few minutes. So Paul, are there any other questions that have come in that maybe I haven't addressed that we could talk about?
So there's a few. There was a question about, where is it here? Can we use something besides 9100 like IPPS, and what about encrypting the print traffic?
So we're focused on direct IP printing, so we can't really step into that custom port space. We can do like an LPR setup like that. But yeah, you're pretty much focused on 9100. Would probably be the best bet.
Okay. And can you use your software to control printer policies like two-sided printing or separation pages?
So in terms of like the management of that, we can create different drivers and their profiles. So we could do like, if you have a setting that exists inside of that profile related to this, then we could probably do it. It's not built into the software itself, so you wouldn't be able to necessarily like enforce quotas or things like that. That's not really what we're about with our product to date. I think it is on the roadmap to offer something like that, but for now, if it's not a feature of the driver itself, it's not going to exist inside of the software.
Okay. Is there any sort of chargeback feature that could be implemented with this?
So kind of in the same talk track there. So now, again, you can see here that I'm doing double-sided printing, obviously, and I'm pushing that out as a profile. So I do have that ability, but I'm not going to be able to enforce that quota. That's on the roadmap for us. It's something we're considering doing. But right now, what we're focused on a little bit more is the ROI of actually removing your print server infrastructure, optimizing your help desk, doing things like that, and focusing a little less on pulling in those costs for end user print jobs. However, like I might have showed here in the report section, we can give you a little snippet of what people are doing in terms of volume. So let me just run that real quick again. So you can see here, black and white color and then duplex variations of those. Those are captured and a cost can be assigned to those. So you can look at that, you can see it, but you'd have to push this data out into some other type of accounting software if you want to do that. We won't restrict the access to print based on an account balance to date. Good question though. We can integrate with solutions that do that. So if you're looking at like a paper cut, maybe you already have that and you're using it for quota management, or rules-based routing, our software coexists very well alongside them, and we can actually help you manage their queues in a lot of cases, and help you manage their print servers as well. So you don't get the benefit of eliminating your print server, but we can still actually manage those print servers for you and bring it all into a single pane of glass. That's kind of what we're doing when we talk about like managing an Epic or a Meditech environment. We're allowing you to manage those print servers in a single pane of glass and have changes replicate out across those servers when you just make them in one place here.
All right, and then there's a couple people that are interested in how this works with non-persistent VDI. So do the drivers have to be loaded every time the desktop deploys, or would it be in a PVS cache? How would that work?
Yeah, so we can still support non-persistent images, but basically what it's doing at that point, we're pushing our client agent to the server, right? So our spooling is going to occur on the server. The only real challenge that you're going to run into is that the self-service portal, that's your primary difference from like a typical published desktop situation, right? So because you're only loading the remote application and loading straight into the app instead of into a desktop session, you can't just open up a browser and install via self-service, but you can still publish the self-service portal as an app, and that's going to allow the self-install queues to load. And again, those will load as they access the session. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but the setup's the same. We're still going to identify those users, still be able to provide that access for end users. But yeah, you're going to be loading when you access that session. The queues are just existing on the server. So it's going to read, the client's going to read what's been deployed to the user and then populate those queues. And it'll do it right up after login for that user, after any other scripts run. So it shouldn't interfere with anything. It should be pretty slick for the most part. But yeah, that's kind of how it's going to work.
Okay.
Any other questions in here?
There's a couple specific to the iGel integration, if you want to spend a little time with that, or if that's a good follow-up for you after.
That might be a good follow-up after. I'll briefly touch on that, but we can talk specifics individually.
Okay.
So what really happens is you can create a profile for PrinterLogic inside of your iGel instance, and then you can apply that out to the workstations or to the iGel thin clients. What you're doing is you're just creating that policy, and then you're activating a license code. So there's a couple different things that you'd add. One of those is like this URL here. There's an authorization code, and then you're just going to click to activate that license. It's pretty simple to do. It's already pre-baked into it, but we can kind of talk about that a little bit more specifically on an individual level. But you should see it in, I think it's 10.5, I think is the release for iGel that it first became available. So,
okay.
Any other questions?
I'm trying to look through here. Not that.
Okay.
There is user. Yep.
Well, if you are curious about this, just so you know, we don't expect you to just believe everything that I'm saying. We'd actually really love it if you want to try the software. It is available for a free proof of concept that's supported by our engineers. All you've got to do is reach out to a partner that you like to buy your software through to get licensing and get those quotes, and then we can support you through a free proof of concept that typically lasts 30 days where we can test out all the different things that you want to test out. And the cool thing about it is if you weren't interested in moving forward with the product at this time, you literally just pull the client agent off the workstation and you're right back to the configuration that you had before in terms of your print server, unless you've changed deployments, in which case the queues that we push can still exist there. So it's kind of up to you how you do it, but it's pretty minimally invasive, and it's a really easy POC to engage in, especially the printer cloud setup. I think, honestly, that one slide that I showed with the animations, it's probably harder to create that slide than it is to create a printer cloud instance, because it takes about 5 minutes to to do that printer cloud instance. So if you're interested, we'd love to help you out with that. And then I think Kyle wanted to take just a minute here and go over kind of our plans for some of the different user groups that we'd like to visit. Kyle, are you able to speak to that now? You on audio?
Yeah, thanks, Eric, and thanks for leading us through this discussion today. Again, I'd like to thank also everybody that joined us today. With PrinterLogic's involvement with the user group community today, we're participating in some upcoming events, and I just wanted to let you guys out there know we will be involving ourselves with the Excel events. One particular that's coming up is the Texas event, and that's March 5th. We're participating in a local group in Charlotte, and then an Excel event at the Great Plains. So if any of this was interesting to you and you wanted to take back to your leadership, we would love for that to be done and discussed. And because we are now Citrix Ready certified and we're on the list, you can definitely invite us to come to your local group, and we'd love to participate however you would like us to do that. So again, thanks for joining us today. Paul, if there's any other questions, we can hit that one more time. If not, maybe Stephanie, you can help us wrap it up.
Sure. Paul, were there any other questions you think we should get to, or were the rest of them some that needed to be taken offline?
I think the rest are probably offline responses.
Okay. All right, then I will grab the screen back. I just have one last slide for you, and I know that some of you may have opted in to potentially win a $200 Amazon gift card. So just want to let you know that we will select the random winner after the webinar, and we will notify that person. And so you can follow us on Twitter and check in at mycugc.org to find out who the winner is. And I've also put in the chat for you a link to a survey as well as a couple of other links. There's a link to the Texas Excel event that Kyle mentioned, and then a link to our overall events calendar so you can kind of see everything that's going on at CUGC. We have a lot coming up in the next few months. So do check that out. And then the survey link I said is in there. It's short, it's anonymous, and it helps us plan our future webinars. So we love to get your feedback. So please fill that out. And finally, I just want to let you know that today's webinar was recorded. So if you need to go back and revisit anything, you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. So you'll be able to watch that at any time at mycugc.org. And I think that pretty much wraps us up. I want to thank Eric and Kyle for being with us today, and I want to thank Paul for watching all those questions. I'll make sure those of you who had questions that didn't get answered, I will send those on to Eric and Kyle after the webinar today, and we'll get those taken care of for you. All right, thanks everyone for coming today. Thanks Eric, thanks Kyle, thanks Paul.
No problem. Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and come visit us at mycugc.org. We'll see you on another webinar again soon. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.